Hi, if you're watching this video, hopefully you've seen the previous two where we broke down movement, we broke down nutrition, and in this third and final video, we're going to break down lifestyle. Another word for lifestyle is your behavioral health. Now there's a lot that goes into this, and I'd say that this is probably the most fuzzy of the three concepts. That means that we still, in the year 2020, don't exactly know how the brain works. Therefore, some of the premeditated decisions that we make, the way that we assess risk and reward, the mechanisms with which we cope, those are still being researched and developed. But even having said that, there's a lot that we can hang our hat on and we can incorporate if we're not just thinking about exercise, but we're thinking about overall health. This is an absolutely vital component. So there's a couple of things that in this video we'll break down and we'll talk about, and hopefully you'll leave with some nuggets that you can immediately apply. The number one thing is sleep. Sleep allows us to recover. Now a lot of times we'll have consultations with people and they'll say, oh yeah, I'm good. I get good sleep. And we're like, cool, how much is that? I get a solid 5 hours of sleep. And even though that's great, what goes through my head and what the research has been proven at UCLA, where there's kind of the world's foremost authorities on sleep, is that below 7 hours, you're not operating optimally. So if you're watching this and you kind of fall into that category, understand that you probably do function well on 5 hours of sleep, but it wouldn't be as well as you would function on 7 hours of sleep. So sleep is important. Not only is the quantity of sleep important, but the quality of sleep. Over the years, we've done lots of investigating anecdotally and experimentally with heart rate variability. And this is what's typically present in a lot of the fitness trackers where it's monitoring your sleep. And there's a strong correlation to how you feel, how you perform, how your body processes calories and what your metabolism looks like, and how you sleep. And so there's some things that we've learned as far as sleep is concerned that we hope that you'll be reminded of in this video. One, how you downregulate or how you wind down for the day is really important. There's a few things that the research is pretty clear cut on. Your body uses energy to break down food. Consuming food and consuming alcohol, which is still a carbohydrate, it's just called ethanol, requires energy. That means that if you're trying to sleep and you've just consumed food, it's like you're pressing the gas and you're pressing the brake at the same time. Your eyes might be closed and you might fall asleep quickly, but at some point your metabolism is still working to break down the calories that you consumed. So a lot of times people will say, you know what, always wind down with a glass of wine. And don't get the wrong impression. We're not saying here that you need to be alcohol free. But understand that consuming wine at the end of your day to wind you down only does so for a fraction of time. Now, if you consume enough, you probably will get drowsy. Alcohol's a downer. So you might fall asleep, especially if it's the right time of day. But 2 or 3 hours into sleep, something really fascinating happens. Your heart rate goes up. The variability of your heart rate is the time between beats. Now what we want is a high variability. The details of that aren't important, but here's the punchline. When you consume alcohol, it gives you the opposite of what you want from a recovery standpoint. When you consume alcohol at night, what your heart rate will show, if you are hooked up to an electromyogram or even just a pulse oximeter that's looking at your pulse, it would show that you're in a heightened state of stress while you're asleep. It's crazy. So if you're going to consume alcohol, you might think about the timing of it. It does have a huge impact on sleep. Now secondly, the environment with which we sleep is really important. Now there's still argument on the type of bed that you should sleep in, whether it's really soft or whether it's really hard, and some of that depends on how you sleep. If you sleep on your back, you're supposed to have a firm mattress. If you sleep on your side or your stomach, there's a different amount of pillows. We won't get into the weeds there, but here's the thing that everyone agrees on. Your room should be colder, it should be very dark, and a sound machine is probably of the utmost importance. What are we trying to do there? We're trying to recreate an environment that we used to sleep in millions of years ago. As silly as it sounds, we seem to recover better when the room's not hot, when there's ambient noise there, but it's not completely sterile, and it's cold enough where our body temperature can go down lower. That seems to help the recovery process as well. So sleep is definitely an important aspect of the management of our lifestyle, of our behavioral health. And why is that? Well, have you ever noticed that when you're really tired, when you're really fatigued, everything bothers you differently? Have you ever noticed that you're not a functioning member of society if you've had several nights in a row? The parents out there know exactly what I'm talking about. We start with sleep because that influences almost everything that we do while we're awake. The second thing that we focus on is actually how you manage stress. Now, everyone has an amount of pressure that they deal with. And I use the word pressure versus stress because there's different definitions between those two words. When we say stress, we're really talking about the biological process with which your body releases hormones in order to fight or flight from something that's happening. Now here's the interesting part. In the 21st century, the stress that we're faced with is very rarely physical stress. It means it's not like thousands of years ago where we actually had to go into a sprint or we had to fight our way out of some situation. Most of the time, it's psychological stress. And that's interesting, right? Because the biological process is still happening. However, it's not anything that we're really in danger of. Here's the thing I want to teach you about that. How we respond to our external environment can put us into a place of this constant cascade of hormones being released that would actually make us unhealthy. There's parts of the brain that have been around since the very first man stepped foot on Earth, and then there's some parts of the brain that have been developed over time. The most sophisticated part of our brain is called the prefrontal cortex. It's the part of our brain that's responsible for logic. It is attached to the hippocampus, which is part of our brain that reminds us of some of the long-term memories that we have. And that 1-2 combo is really important. It's really important to mitigate stress because when I can logically think through something, and the example I like to use is Spock, right? Spock doesn't have any emotion about everything. Everything's logical. Well, if we can rely on that part of our brain, then typically we can remember times that we've experienced this and realize, oh my gosh, I'm actually okay. I don't need to freak out about this thing that's happening right there. I remember that time 3 years ago where something similar to this happened, and I guess I'll just try this strategy. Now, in the very back part of our brain, there's something called the amygdala. It's the oldest part of our brain. It's also the part of our brain that is responsible for that fight or flight response. So there's certain parts of our brain. One's responsible for logic thought. Another part is responsible for emotion. And the base, oldest level of our brain is responsible for action. Now that part of our brain is really important because if I didn't have it and something needed my split-second response time, it would be up a creek. But here's the interesting part. A lot of times if we don't take a second to process what's happening, there's this phenomenon. It's called an amygdala hijack. And it means that instead of going through this long loop around the logical part of my brain, the prefrontal cortex we mentioned, it immediately jumps to the amygdala. The amygdala takes over, and without you thinking, you'll immediately jump to this fight or flight response. Now here's the punchline and what I want you to leave with. Is that we have a choice. If I'm not thinking, if I'm unaware of what's happening, your brain sends a signal that says you can't cope. Your brain sends a signal to the amygdala that says you can't handle this. You better do something crazy. Now, if you're not a child, which I imagine you're not if you know how to press the buttons on this, It means that you actually know how to cope with things. And one of the best strategies that we implement with our members, and one of the things that we continue to think about, in addition to the strategies for de-stressing, is just to be aware and present of what you're feeling and what you're thinking. There's two things that typically stress us out. It's when there's a lack of control, or when someone doesn't like what we do. It's true. One of the things that we coach, and one of the aspects of a comprehensive program of health, is developing strategies with which, one, for sure, we can de-stress and downregulate, but two, hit stress and interpret the things and the stimulus that are happening to us in the right way. If this is something that's piqued your interest, I mean, we just touched the tip of the iceberg, but we'd love to talk to you about that. I have a master's degree in neuroscience, and this is, in addition to movement and nutrition, something that I'm incredibly passionate about, and I think is the future of comprehensive health. It's blending these worlds of physical and mental health together, which is how life works anyways, right? Once again, if you're interested in hearing more about this, we would love to schedule a free consultation with you. Even if you don't live in town and you just want to talk shop, nothing would make us happier than to talk with somebody that's like-minded. Anyways, thank you for watching these videos. We'd love to send you some more information if you're interested, and we'll either see you in the gym or we'll see you online.